Alright, so this is going to be the first video in a multi-part series where I will talk about the process of job hunting. In this series I will discuss how much wage you can actually ask for, so to know your worth, but as well the do's and don'ts during interviews and also the wage negotiation process when you are at a current employer or when you are already employed. This with the end goal in mind of A, getting hired, and B, to leave as little money on the table as possible. In this video I will talk about how to negotiate your wage when applying for a job. I will also discuss how to negotiate a higher wage at your current employer, but that's going to be for another video since otherwise this one will be way too long. Before we start, however, there is one thing I do want you to remember from this video and want to keep in mind throughout this video. And this may sound harsh, but sadly it is the truth. You aren't paid for what you are worth, you are paid accordingly to how easy it is to replace you. Or in other words, if there is no one available to replace you, then you can ask for a lot of money. So how much you can ask depends on a couple different factors. The first one being professions where there is a labor shortage. IT is a great example of this, especially in the last few decades. There is an ever-increasing number of ITers available, but the demand is also increasing exponentially, which means there aren't enough available, which also means that these people with those skill sets can ask for a lot of money to do that type of work. It's basic supply and demand. And you don't have to be an ITer. Plumbers, for example, have been on this labor shortage list for quite some time as well, and they can ask for quite a bit of money to do that type of work. So it doesn't specifically have to be IT. There are plenty of lists available online. It also depends a little bit on where you live, what country you live in, which jobs are actually in demand. So check those out. And those types of jobs usually will pay better. The second one is to niche down. The more you know about a specific topic, the more you can get paid to do so. Even if it's just a really niche topic that only a few people know and not many people need. If there is only a handful of people available who can do that type of job, then you can ask for a lot of money. To give some IT-related example again, what tends to happen is that when the company reaches a certain size and it decides to build a software for their own business processes, that gets built, that's all fine and dandy, but then over the years all their other business processes get added to that specific software. And in the end, or even after a few years, decades, it gets really hard to replace that software. So what then happens is that it's going to be really costly and difficult as well to replace it. So in most cases, it just stays there. So the effect is that in some large corporations, you would be really surprised at what is still running in the background. One major example I know is of a bank that still uses COBOL for some of their background processes. This is a programming language that even in the 80s was considered to be outdated, but yet they are still using it. Then through the grapevine I heard, since not many people still know this programming language or know how to use it effectively, so there are only a handful of people left that can do that type of programming, which means they can ask for a boatload of money. And I know from friends that they do get paid boatloads of money to do just that, to keep those systems up and running, since it's going to be way too costly to replace them even if they wanted to. Third, the size and the sector of a company. In general, larger corporations will have more money to spend, so they can also offer higher wages. This doesn't mean that you don't have to apply for smaller companies, it's just not always the case as well. Also, it's good to take note of the sector that the company is in, since, for example, pharmaceuticals will pay way more for the same type of job than, for example, the tourism industry. Fourth, your experience and education. This one speaks for itself, but even for the first 10 years, your degree will still have somewhat of an impact on your wage. That said, from my personal experience, in most applications or most types of jobs, after 10 years, your degree is more of an afterthought and isn't going to be that important anymore for the hiring process, but that's going to be a video for another time as well. Your experience is going to be the most important factor. I mean, if you already have experience in the same sector or even in the same type of job, then you can ask for a lot more money, since the employer won't have to wait as long for you to get up and running and be a really profitable employee. So that said, how much can you actually ask for during a job interview? Well, the first thing you can do to just get a general idea is just to look up online in Google and search for your degree, your experience level, and see how much on average you can earn with that degree and that experience level. There are plenty of websites available in your own language that do just that. With that in mind, there is a really cool website, Glassdoor.com, where you do have to fill in some amount of information about a current employer or a former employer to get access to the whole content of the site. But the thing is, after that, a lot of people do post not only reviews of a company online there, but also reviews of their salary and how much they earned in a specific role. So with that in mind, you can already know or tell how much you can earn in a specific role in a specific company. However, if the company is too small or there aren't that many wage reviews for it online, then what you can do is just look at another company or a competitor of the company in the same region, and generally their wages will be somewhat the same. So for example, if Coca-Cola doesn't have any wages on your specific role online on Glassdoor, then what you can do is look at Pepsi and see how much they offer for a certain role. It will give you somewhat of an idea of what you can get even at a rivaling company. A third way to know exactly how much you can earn is to go to a recruiter that specializes in your particular field that you want to get into. For example, if you want to get into a marketing role, then go speak to a marketing and sales recruiter that does nothing else than recruit marketing and sales profiles. So how do you find those? Well, they are all on LinkedIn. So what you do is type into LinkedIn recruitment consultant followed by the specific niche that you need. If it's logistics, if it's marketing, if it's HR, just type that in afterwards. And then you can get a full list of everyone. They will usually be ranked by region. So everyone in your region who is who has that job title. What you can then do is just send them a message. And if they are worth half their salt, then what they will do is plan in an interview, see what exactly your wage expectations are, what you want to do in that specific sector or why you want to get into it. And then they can even get or help you land a job. Also, because they are highly specialized in that specific niche, means that they know exactly what your potential wage could be or what wage you can expect from someone of your expertise or your experience level. The way recruiters work is by effectively selling you to a company and asking for a fee in return. Because of this, it's also going to be easier for them to sell you to a company if you already have some experience in the sector. So they will be even more keen on helping you if you do. The fourth way you can use is by effectively just go applying to different types of jobs and see how much you can get offered when eventually you get a job offer. Especially if you have 2 or more job offers, then you can just compare the two and even leverage one against the other. This may not always work, not all employers do this, but you can start a bidding war for yourself. But from what I've heard, especially the last few years, this has really, this doesn't really tend to happen anymore or that often anymore. And I wouldn't do this too much because you won't make yourself that popular as well. In the end, when you do make it to a wage negotiation phase or to the interview and wage is going to be discussed, then there are 2 things that you can do. What they will always ask is what are your wage expectations? And there is effectively 2 answers you can give them. One, you can just state your wage expectations, so the exact number that you want, and that's it. If you do this, then it is best to give the highest number that you found during your research, because otherwise, if you just ask for example, 3,000 euros and you could potentially get 3,500 and you say, I want 3,000 euros, then you can be damn sure that they're going to do an offer for 3,000 and not 3,500. Or the second thing that you can do is reverse the question and ask how much will the role effectively pay. This one works especially well in a country like Belgium, where the gross wage is just a small portion of the total package. Because if they have any follow-up questions on it, then you can just state, well, I need to take into account all the other fringe benefits. Like for example, the amount of days paid leave that you can get on an annual basis, or other fringe benefits that may apply to your specific job. If they do keep insisting on an actual amount, then just give them a fork. But in this instance as well, use your higher estimate that you found as your lowest amount. So for example, if you want to earn at least 3,000, or you discovered in your research that you can get on average about 3,000, then I would give them a fork of 3,000 to 3,500 gross every single month. That way you can game the system a little bit by giving them the option to A, lowball you a little bit and offering you 3,000, 2, giving you a little bit more than what you initially expected. In that case, it's a win for you as well. And 3, just giving the maximum that you could possibly get or possibly want, and in that case, and that is the higher number of the 3. This last one is really in the case that they really want to have you. In reality though, they will mostly, or most of the time, will pick option A or B. And don't be scared of doing this, because if your wage expectations are really too high, then they will let you know immediately, or in most cases they will let you know immediately. And even then, if you have doubts about it, whether or not they will accept it or think it is going to be too much, just ask. If your wage expectations are way too high, you can just ask, is this in line with what you wanted to pay for the role? So you can basically just ask the same question that they ask you. In general though, if you can, I would avoid stating the amount that you want or the amount of wage that you want altogether. This simply because if you give them a number and later they offer you that number, there is no more room for negotiations, because if you state, I want 3,000, they offer you 3,000, then afterwards you say, okay, I want more, it's not going to work, since they will just state, but you said you wanted 3,000 and we gave you 3,000 and we already made a nice offer. So there is effectively no more room for negotiations. The same goes for when you give them a fork and they offer you, for example, 3,300 or 3,500 even. In the first case, they can state that they already made quite an effort to give you more than the minimum that you wanted. And in the second case, where they offer the higher of the two, or the highest of your fork, then they can just state that that is the maximum that they are willing to pay, even though in reality they might go quite a bit higher. But since you already stuck yourself in a fork or in a range, that means that you don't have any other room to negotiate higher than that specific fork that you gave them. So in general, it's best to avoid actual numbers and just make them do the offer and then negotiate afterwards, because otherwise you don't have that much more room to negotiate, even if in reality they could pay a hell of a lot more. On the other hand, if you didn't disclose your wage, then it could be that they offer 3,400 immediately because they don't want to lowball you, and then you can just state, well, 3,600 was more in line with my expectations, and already you've won €100 or $100 dollar, whatever, over your initial range that you set for yourself. It's important to note here though that this strategy is harder to do when you are unemployed, obviously, because then you don't have that much leverage to negotiate. Otherwise you can just state, well, I'm already really good at or already content with my current employer, so there has to be a really good offer to switch employers. If you're unemployed, then it's rather difficult to negotiate wage when you are not earning anything or not earning that much. Also, for people who just entered the job market, this is going to be really difficult since you don't have any experience to fall back on. You do need to have some credentials in order for this to work. But one key takeaway here from all of this is, if you have a job already and you get an offer for another job, don't hesitate to ask for more wage, even when they already made you an offer. You already have a no, and the only other possible answer that you can get is a yes with some potential extra money each month. I know this wasn't a typical finance video, so I do hope you liked it. You know the drill, like, subscribe and all that other stuff. And if you have any questions, feel free to answer or ask them rather, and I will answer them in the comments down below. And I hope to see you next time. Bye.